Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Darshan Talks. I'm really excited because I'm going to get a chance to talk about the question we all have been wondering, which is what happens after a clinical trial? Because everyone's talking about how we're going to save lives, and clinical trials are this great opportunity because we talk about research as a care option, which is wonderful. It's a great opportunity to talk about that. But what no one's talking about is the other opportunities for research to actually be a care option when the trials actually ended. And I have with us three separate individuals who actually contribute to this. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, and then we'll talk about what they do, what was the genesis of the idea, and kind of build from there.
So I'm Lori Warrens. I'm the program director of the MedSurplus Alliance, which is a program that's part of the Task Force for Global Health, which is an organization that brings organizations together to address issues of health equity in terms specifically around disease elimination or eradication and around health system strengthening. And our program falls in the health systems, healthcare strengthening part of what the task force does.
Hi, everyone. Donna Libretti Cooke. I'm a consultant for Kits4Life, which sits within the MedSurplus Alliance and the task force, working very closely with Lori and Greg. I actually got involved in Kits4Life when I was at Bayer. One of my ancillary responsibility was project lead for implementing Kits4Life. And so I did that for about four and a half years as a side project and loved it so much when I ended up leaving Bear. I approached Greg and Lori. I said, "You guys want help? I really believe in this program. I want to help you grow it." And that was a little over a year ago.
Appreciate having us on. I'm Greg Folz. I proudly serve as the chair of the Kits4Life Advisory Council. And my background is in clinical research, about 30 years, but from the site side. We're seeing about 800 clinical trials. We usually averaged, was a big high performing site, usually averaged 8 trials a year, research staff of 35. And I really appreciate the comment that you made about research as a care option, because that's what was why we were such a clinical trial site, is that we truly have found clinical value and the opportunity for our patients that we could not find current treatments worked. And so we really looked towards research as a care option. And we were very successful with that because basically we were providing our patients hope.
Lori, you talk about the Med Surplus Alliance, which suggests that there are multiple groups involved. Could you talk a little bit about what that means? And then I'm going to dig in deeper with Kids for Life.
Yeah, absolutely. We were created 13 years ago by a number of individuals who were involved in medical product donations across different sectors. So it included donors like hospital and health systems and companies. It included intermediaries, the organizations that collect those donations, sort them, make sure that they meet international guidelines and country level guidelines, and then send them to a location to be used in a clinical setting, patient care setting. And then organizations like the task force, where we bring collaborations together to try to address big problems on a large scale. And so our approach to trying to improve the quality of donations and the quantity of donations available to help close this gap in healthcare and help make sure that when a clinical provider reaches for something, it's there, whatever they need, when they need it, where they need it, was to take an approach of developing cross-sector, large-scale initiatives where we could create systems or improve systems for identifying where those donations are, making sure they meet standards, and then getting them where they need to go. And so that's the role of the MedSurplus Alliance. Our very first project was to work with Ascension Healthcare in the U.S. At the time, they were the largest nonprofit healthcare system. And we really thought it was important to have the entire donation chain as part of the process, but also stakeholders. So we engaged universities to do research for us to help us improve processes and better ways to determine impact. And then we just brought in other organizations like Catholic Health Association, which had an interest across their membership, and a number of organizations. So and today that is still our approach, is to look for those large scale system-wide changes that we can make. And Kids for Life has turned out to, you know, I just exceed everyone's, I think, maybe not everyone, maybe not Greg's, but in addition to where it's becoming a benchmark now. And that's the kind of goal we're looking for, where it's the default thing that you do is to donate and donate it to a vetted organization that you can ensure it's going to be used where it's needed and properly.
So that really is a great lead into Greg, isn't it? So Greg, tell me a little bit about where Kids for Life started. Where did you initiate it from?
Well, if you think about, again, going back to that core belief that clinical trials can't serve as a care option. So if you base your belief on that, you have to be able to. One of our standards is that if you're going to do that, that care delivered in a clinical trial has to be equal to or better than standard of care, right? Because in fact, I always say it has to be better because you're using either an investigational drug or an investigational product, like a device. Now, so think about that. So therefore, if you can increase that standard, hire the staff that can deliver and the doctor's engagement and support to deliver a level of care that's equal to or better than standard of care. One thing that you also have to be concerned about is the medical supplies and the equipment you use. Therefore, those medical supplies and medical equipment used in a clinical trial, we found our stats, those are medical grade. They were no different than the supply and equipment that was being used every day for normal patient visits and patient care. The only problem is that you had a surplus. Even though we were a high performing site, average enrollment rate was about 150% because we used clinical trials for the right reason. You still had surplus supplies. We had to destroy those supplies. We had to and destroy that equipment or return the equipment. And that's because we've found in our research that that's because is that the sponsors didn't have the infrastructure and systems in place to accept the returnable supplies. They did not have resources available to inventory those supplies, or they expired, they claiming expiration. And so the safest thing to do was then to destroy. And that's what generated my staff. They consistently for a number of years said, Greg, can we donate? I was so blessed and fortunate to meet Lori and Med Surplus Alliance because they already had a distribution, a gold standard distribution system in place with Ascension Health. And so I was given some excellent advice by a number of sponsors right away, and individuals, like Donna and her team that said, Greg, you got to figure out something else. Number one is that sponsors will not move until that liability issue is addressed. They need to be assured that they're delayed from those supplies.
So did you find yourself going, every site can do this, or did you see this as a sponsor initiative?
First, it was driven again from the site because my staff found that any destruction, they made clear that it was just a meaningless act. And they did not do. They would have to spend because we were such a large site. We would spend anywhere from 3 to 6 hours destroying after every trial, destroying all these supplies. Well, if you think about reusing palliative care options, they would rather treat patients, right? Right. Screen patients and get them into these promising new treatments and devices. So they would prefer that. And that's what we said we had to change. We had to change that. And if there's a way that we can take these supplies and use it for humanitarian aid and for training, we did.
So, Donna, I have to ask this question because you faced it when you were at Bear and you were a proponent, you were a champion for this. For me, if I got someone saying, you know what, we're going to use this, it's for a great reason, but your name may be associated with this. And you know what, there might be some great stuff that comes out of it because, quite honestly, you're just going to waste this money and this product. But there's risk. And as someone who does compliance, as someone who does law, I'm going, all these red bells are like ringing off in the back of my head. You faced that. What was the pushback? You're an attorney. We're not giving legal advice to be clear, but you're an attorney. What was your thought process? I know you obviously came in the end and decided to help, but what did you go through?
Yeah, I'd identified the appropriate stakeholders, number one, across there, corporate donations being a big one, and legal, obviously, and compliance. But because we had a template to work off of from MedSurplus Alliance that delinked um, and accepted liability, and it was the gold standard in terms of accreditation and the code of conduct, abiding by WHO standards, that really set a high bar and satisfaction for Bayer. I will admit that the legal piece was not too difficult to overcome, to tell you the truth, when they saw the template. But corporate donations was a learning curve for me in understanding their high level of expectation as a very large pharma organization and what they expected and working with them. So that was a learning curve.
Greg and Lori, I have to ask this question because Lori, you obviously created the initiative, if you will, and now Greg's sort of following it up, and then you get champions like Donna. How do you delink?
Sure. Thank you. It's a great question because it's very important not just for large corporations, but any donor, no matter who's donating a piece of equipment or supplies to another organization to take and use in a different setting. There needs to be a donation agreement, and in that agreement, there's some key elements. One element is describing the nature of the relationship. You know, why you're donating the product, what the intended use is. It's only a couple of sentences to take care of that. There needs to be a section where it acknowledges that once the donation is made, the donor is relinquishing all ownership of that product. So it no longer is theirs to make a decision about where it's used or how it's used. And then a liability statement that by accepting the product, the MSRO is accepting liability for what might happen. And so for donors, for them to know that they don't have to be the experts on what might happen with it, and that there's a liability is they're released from liability, and that the MSROs have insurance policies and have well-established procedures to address any liability issues that there might be, is a significant, relief. And, there are some, large corporations, like the health systems we were talking about, or corporate partners that have safe harbor language or other standard language that they would like to see in an agreement, and those get added to, can be added to the donor agreement. And that is that any MSRO can reject any donation at any time as well. And so they're not required to accept and certainly aren't required to direct them to any particular location. And what that does is help to uh, address the issue of Foreign Corrupt Practices Act concerns.
So you've used the term MSRO multiple times. What does that actually stand for?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I should say that. That stands for Medical Surplus Recovery Organization. And so this is a small industry that can range from organizations that are actually pretty large, have huge warehouses, and accept a variety of simple and also sophisticated medical supplies, equipment, devices, and pharmaceuticals. Their job is to serve as an intermediary to accept the product, make sure that it's usable and acceptable under international standards and best practice and code of conduct. Um, Inventory it, ship it, and then send it to an organization that is specifically requesting it.
Do you tend to be primarily international or also the US? Or let me ask that question first. And this is primarily Lori, I guess, the second.
Yeah, that's a great question. Historically, they have I would say 90% of the donations that were made to recipient organizations went from the United States to another country. And so, but in every case, every MSRO does provide some sort of donations locally, and they have to be familiar with what the guidance is or the restrictions are on what can be donated here in the U.S. and what can't. And so they're well versed on that, and in case of if there's something where there's some sort of documentation required, they go through the necessary steps.
And Donna, one of the other concerns I probably have is redirecting stuff that was supposed to be, and stuff is obviously the technical term, but redirecting stuff that was supposed to go into charitable hands, like by charitable organizations, instead going to the gray market. How did you at Bayer and going forward when you help Greg, how did you find yourself going, here's how we're going to prevent that redirection, or we're not worried about it for XYZ reasons. So talk me through that thought process.
Oh, honestly, because MedSurplus Alliance had set up their code of conduct and their standards, and they had worked with health systems, that was enough for Bear to understand how the system was going to work and not have concerns about the gray market. And anytime this was discussed in developing our business case,
Talk to me about the impact you've made. I mean, Donna talked about these sponsors who've gone from I don't want to do this to how quickly can I come on board, and in 4 to 6 months they're live. Talk to me about the impact that Kits4Life has made.
Oh, great question. Impact is beyond our expectation, and it's not because of one individual. Someone told me years ago, Greg, this is bigger than you. So figure it out. And that's where, Donna and Lori and the team and all the sponsors. I mean, the sponsors are the ones, thanks to them, that have grown the categories from just kits, little logo has is just the kits, to now 40 different categories of supplies and equipment. I believe we've had right now close to 1.6 million donations, of over 200 tons of supplies that have been diverted from landfills that are now made it into organizations that are really in need, that have been vetted, that they know. That's what the MSROs also do. They vet those recipient organizations in terms of saying, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? And so that's right now we're in 49 countries. And I believe the latest report for all your listeners, this is exclusive release, that we've impacted over 2 million lives today.
Oh my God.
Again, so blessed and fortunate to have individuals like Lori and Donna and all the other sponsors on the team, and more to come. And we just scratched the surface. We just scratched the surface on that with the amount of supplies. And it's not to the fault of anyone. It's that logistically it's now possible. And where you referenced that, how do you address those risks? I saw it when I first met Lori and MedSurplus Alliance. I kind of related it to the life sciences from a site's perspective. I saw MedSurplus Alliance, definitely a accrediting body. They're kind of like the FDA.
Greg, how can people reach out to you?
The website is what is the website, Lori? So I don't mess it up.
Well, actually, I can make it even easier. If you go to kits4life.com, it will take you to our website, to the Kits4Life
There you
page.
go.
And from there are contact ways for you to contact. Yeah.
And Donna, you were kind enough to share your email address in the comments, and we'll make sure we include that. It's
Libretti Cooke -consultant at taskforce.org.
awesome. And thanks, everyone.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Call, click, or email.